There is a lot of content online which we may not consider to be brain rot content, but that doesn't necessarily make them the opposite of brain rot. In this study, we will be talking about the type of content that, when compared to brain rot content, has the exact opposite effect on the psyche of the viewer. I call them gourmet content. Now, one of the first things that you notice about brain rot content, or BRC, as I would refer to them for the rest of this video, is the excessive sensory loudness. There is a lot of flashy editing that seem wholly unnecessary to the topic being discussed. The feeling induced in the viewer is that of stimulation. Now, this kind of flashiness is absent altogether from gourmet content, or GC. Yet, there exists a certain seduction in GC as well. It draws you in and keeps you immersed. In fact, the amount of attention that it draws from the viewer is not only more than that of BRC, but feels entirely different in nature. It is because of this difference in the quality of attention capture that I shall not call it stimulation. The better word for it is captivation. GC captivates the viewer. This brings me to the first point that I made in this video, that not all non-BRC content is gourmet content. A tutorial which can be information dense and educationally valuable to its viewer does not necessarily qualify as gourmet content simply by virtue of the value that it provides. It must also be captivating, which several creators actually manage to do with their educational content. This example of captivating educational content brings us to our second characteristic. There are channels like Veritasium and 3 Blue 1 Brown that go deep into topics, including technical topics, but the video does not feel like it is made for a specialized audience. This particular video from Patrick Willems actually goes deep into the technicalities of analyzing the art form that is cinema. And yet, despite the title, it is not positioned as content for the consumption of a film studies student. Anyone who has even unconsciously wondered deeply about the nature of movies is likely to click on this video and even binge it in one shot. We can say the same for this video, which might attract fewer folks but is still not positioned for ML engineers or aspiring ML engineers. When I see this title and I see this channel name, the first thought that comes to my head is, I do want to know how LLMs work. It's inducing an interest in me, the layman. Now, I can't say the same about every other video on this topic. So, the second characteristic of GC is that it is generalist in nature. It doesn't cater to a specific occupation, for example, students, professionals, or businessmen. Neither does it cater to people belonging to a particular field. In short, it doesn't attract a specialist audience, but a curious one. And what happens if we give in to that curiosity? That brings us to the third characteristic. I remember when I watched this video from this channel called Like Stories of Old, it filled me with ideas and imagination about grandeur in Spider-Man 3, and the presence of grandeur in my own life, and the presence of grandeur in the other stories that I've consumed, and other themes present in Spider-Man 3 are the teleology of grandeur and how grandeur relates to Christian denouncement of pride. I was full of ideas, not just the ones that were driven into me by this specific video, but also emergent ideas that were forming in my own psyche, perhaps many of which were sitting in my head for a long time and only needed a poke to come bursting out. Gourmet content acts like that poke of reflection. It submerges you in an idea space and then inspires, even demands original inspiration out of you. Now, there exists a very specific quality to the narrative design of GC. It makes the viewer oscillate between a state of suspense and a state of surprise. The effect is that the viewer consumes information with a sense of wonder. But how can this state of suspense and surprise be maintained? Is it possible to do that simply by juggling words? No. The content needs to be novel. It needs to be something that we have not actively thought about before, something original that is born from the creativity and the imagination of the creator. I tried to think of a single word that would capture the four characteristics that I discussed in this video, and I arrived at quite a curious one. GC contains the unmistakable element of discovery. The viewer doesn't feel like they are being fed information or being entertained. Instead, they're being pulled into a hero's journey to make sense of the world around them. It's like a quest for ideas and intellectual adventure. Thanks for listening. I would love to read your opinions in the comments.